Good morning and welcome to our next session in our Symposium for Ancient Greece. It's a pleasure to have you here in Booth Library, and I think we have real treats this morning. I see instruments around the room, and I see a speaker that we saw last week who was extremely full of information and raucous behavior, befitting the themes.
You sussed me out very quickly.
But so it's nice to have you all here, and students and others who are here, certainly welcome. We hope you'll attend other sessions that are outlined in your brochure there. And I will ask Dr. Wafik Wabi to introduce our speakers today.
Welcome to this noontime session in the Ancient Greek Symposium, a futuristic look towards through ancient lenses. And we are so delighted to have Dr. Glaros with us, and real music today. We are really a real treat today for ancient Greece. So it's not only echoes, but real thing. So it's all yours. Please introduce our friends here.
Thank you very much. So I'm Dr. Angela Glaros. I'm faculty in the Sociology and Anthropology Department, and I have with me two great, wonderful musical colleagues and friends, Tufan, who's going to be playing a Turkish instrument called the balama. And so that's for the final portion of the presentation, but first I have to bore you with words. And I want to thank Dr. Wakbi very much for creating this venue for me, because this is what we call an add-on presentation. A bonus. I was so excited at the opening reception for this symposium that I emailed him that night when I got home and said, oh, I wish I would have known what was involved, because I could have done this, 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 and this. And he said, well, why don't you do this, this, and this? So here I am. I'm going to talk to you today about an issue that's near and dear to my heart, even though I preface everything that I'm about to say by saying that I am not a classic scholar by any stretch of the imagination. But Greece being what it is, you cannot conduct research in contemporary Greece without somehow engaging or addressing the ancient. So this theme is really important to me. And I want to talk about the dynamic interpenetration of past and present, which is part of the Greek reality. And that's why I've titled this talk, Ancient Echoes in Greek Expressive Culture. A lot of scholars who work in modern Greece, including anthropologists such as Michael Hertzfeld, whose quote I have up here, have come to the realization that Greece bears its past both as a trophy and also a burden, which is why Michael Hertzfeld says Greece is so overshadowed by an illustrious past that it must humiliatingly always append the suffix modern to its name. In other words, modern Greece, our linguistic students will know this, is the marked category. Ancient Greece is the unmarked category. If you say Greece, the assumption is we're speaking of ancient Greece. Meanwhile, time has marched on and the Greeks are still with us and still engaged in a dynamic culture that pulls from its past but is creating new things. But it's a function of where Greece comes into play in the Western world that we're always encountering this ancient legacy, burden, whatever you want to call it, depending on circumstances. So that's very much, that's an issue you confront no matter what kind of research you do in Greece. They can't build a subway system without encountering ancient artifacts that must be cataloged, dealt with properly. So in a very concrete way, Greeks are constantly confronting the ancient past and interpreting it, making sense of it. Coming from an anthropological standpoint, as I do, looking at culture, one of the ways in which people have tried to understand many elements of Greek culture is through something, oops, why are you going forward? Oh no. Through something known as a doctrine of survivals. Oh, I see, it's taking you on a slideshow. This is relevant given what I'm about to talk about. So those of you who've studied some anthropology, and we do have some anthropologists in the room, will be familiar with E.B. Tylor, who's one of the founding fathers of some of the theory that we still carry with us today. And he thought of the doctrine of survivals as characteristics of culture from an earlier time that have persisted into later stages. This was part of a schema of so-called cultural evolution from primitive to civilized. We've abandoned that notion of evolution as somewhat misguided. When you talk about human culture, evolution is not the best model to apply. Change is appropriate, but we're constantly mixing past and present, so we can't speak of one single linear, unidirectional evolution. But the doctrine of survivals and that sort of discourse has entered into interpretations of Greek culture and history so strongly that we have to address it. It's a way in which Western scholars have framed Greek culture for a very long time, and which Greeks themselves have internalized as they were moving out of the Ottoman Empire and into forging a nation state. The ancient Greek legacy was an extremely valuable and useful key to the West, you might say. Here's why you should care about us, because we gave you democracy, et cetera, all of these things. And it was largely on the basis of that connection that Greece was able to secure financial and political support for their independence. I use that term loosely. I'm not going to get into all the politics of what happened to Greece when it became a nation state. But this doctrine of survivals, however faulty we find it today, theoretically has carried with us. So what that means in practical terms when we look at Greek expressive culture, things like dance, music, festival, never mind language and architecture. What it means is a search for links to the past, embroidery motifs, elements of Greek costumes, dances, ways of holding hands in dancing that you can trace back to ancient times and therefore legitimate in contemporary times. So this slide, these little slides that are advancing here are scenes from the Endora Stratos Dance Theater, which is a folk dance theater in Athens that was founded in 1953. When it gets back to the first slide, I just want to draw your attention to the image. It's an 1800s painting of Greeks dancing among the ancient ruins. And that's a really important image. It captures it all. I don't know if it'll come back now, but hopefully you saw it. So when we speak of the doctrine of survivals in terms of interpreting Greek culture, in the Greek case, the survivals were not always examples of evolution. You know, this is what they brought from the past and look where they've come. In many cases, in the Greek case, coming out of the Ottoman Empire and having a new status as an independent European nation state, sometimes those survivals were taken as evidence of devolution. This is the glory from which you fell. So the political stakes are very high for Greece as a nation to pitch themselves, interpret themselves in light of those ancient elements of culture. So the survivals prove that fallen Greece still is in touch with that ancient past. It hasn't been polluted by contact with the Ottomans, which is how many European thinkers framed Greece's identity. And it's the tension that Greeks have internalized as part of their understanding of their own history and culture. They struggle against it. It's a tension they live with. So that's why I have the poster here from the first modern Olympic Games from 1896. You can see there's a woman there who's in, folk costume, juxtaposed with ancient ruins. So that's a wonderful example to me of this project of linking what was then contemporary expressive culture, folk dance costumes, setting them into a context in which they can be appreciated and understood by other Western powers as a legitimate part of Europe. So the Endora Stratos Dance Theater did much of this same project. In Endora Stratos' writings, the founder of the theater, she's always linking present expressive culture to elements of the past. in one of her books, she speaks of her theater as a living museum. So already you see some framing, much like you would go to the Archaeological Museum in Athens and see columns and see statues. You can go to the Endora Stratos Dance Theater and see a living museum of Greek history. And in one of her books, she has, many, many plates where she's juxtaposed pictures of Greek speakers from Asia Minor. They're holding these wooden spoons that in Greek they call krotala. And then there's a picture from ancient times where you see a dancer holding similar things. The argument is this is ancient Greek heritage, and therefore not to be abandoned. Therefore it's to be embraced. I want to speak a little bit about my research on a Greek island because it will give another view of what I argue is a more dynamic way of understanding a relationship between past and present that isn't necessarily so fraught as this Doctrine of Survivals. So this is just a little map to show you where I did my research. That tiny, tiny red area up there in the inset is where Skyros is located. It's in the northwest Aegean. On the right is a view of the main settlement called Chora, which just means village. And I did research there in the year 2007, 2008. I was focused mostly on music, vocal music, and what it meant for Skyrians, how they conceived of their vocal music, how they understood it in terms of their local identity. And music is just one of the ways in which Skyrians express an identity through expressive culture. They're very well known for their carnival. I'm going to play this clip now. Hopefully this will play. If not, I'll just talk you through it. And we're not getting any sound. That's okay. The important bit is you see the way this person is dressed. He's wearing a shaggy goatskin cape, a kidskin mask over his face, a lot of goat elements in the carnival there, dancing with goat bells around his waist. That's the central masqueraded figure of Skyrian carnival. And people quite consciously refer to this as a Dionysian holdover, that there's this ancient tie. This is related to ancient forms of Dionysian worship, which is why I have a picture of a satyr there on the left who's, one of Pan's contingent, right? So there are some goat elements to the satyr's body. And so a lot of people like to make that link that, this is, we've had this carnival for so long it goes back to Dionysian worship. And then there are other local theories about where the carnival on Skyros originated. That it started with a local man who, lost all of his goat herd. They all died, so he skinned them and put on the skins and wore them into town. So you have multiple stories going on that have to do with local identity. That, on the one hand, goat herding is a big occupation on this island. It was one of the main economic activities. So that's sort of the practical, material element. But because of the Doctrine of Survivals, people are always looking for those ancient ties. So a lot of people will very casually speak about the remnants of Dionysian worship in carnival. I don't know if I need to mention that carnival, in most places in the world, carnival is a time of drunken revelry, and that's certainly an element in the Greek context. And of course, then you have Dionysius to make that okay, right? So that's a discourse you do hear on Skyros. Another way they have of framing their current expressive culture in terms of their past, which I think is maybe more productive, is the way in which they speak of their songs as forms of Byzantine music. This is a different piece of the Greek past, still in line with the ancients because the Greeks understand Byzantium to be a direct heir to everything from ancient Greece, an inheritor. Okay. I am plugged in here. It should work. So I want to play you two samples. One is a sample of a local Skyrian song, one of the genre that they consider Byzantine. These are songs that are normally sung around a table. Well, there's a feast, so they're called table songs, tragudia tis tavlas. And oftentimes they're performed a cappella. Sometimes they're unmetered, so they just, kind of stretch as the singer bends them. I'll play you that, and then I'm going to play you a bit of Byzantine liturgical chant, and hopefully you'll hear the connections. Hopefully we'll hear something. Oh, I have to go out. Maybe not. Well, we can try later. I can try later to bring that up if we have time after the Q&A. But it happened over and over again as I was asking people about these songs. They would refer to them. Well, our songs are Byzantine. They're Byzantine. They come to us from Byzantine times. The melodies are Byzantine. The style in which we sing them is Byzantine, a very ornamented melody that follows the same musical modes as Byzantine liturgical music. And the reason why I suggest that this is a more productive discourse, a productive way of framing the relationship between past and present, is because I think it marks a different kind of continuity. So if this doctrine of survivals, is sort of evidence in a way of devolution, here's the past glory. Here are some remnants today that have survived, a few crumbs of past glory. That's rather depressing. It's not a very positive way to look at contemporary Greek culture. When people speak of elements of their culture that draw from the Byzantine, you feel a much different discourse at work. It's a marker of continuity. Number one, yes, there's a temporal lineage. Byzantium as a direct heir to the philosophy and the thought and the culture of ancient Greece, with a thick layer of Christianity spread over that. Fair enough to say. It's also a very dynamic sense of continuity because it isn't just flowing from the past to the present, but present-day elements of culture recast Greeks' view of the past, of the Byzantine past. And in the past few decades, Byzantine culture, particularly music, has served as a very dynamic and creative source for Greeks to rethink many elements of their culture. There was a resurgence in the 1970s of some Greek urban genres of music called rebettica. The music had been banned for a long time under the dictatorship of the 60s and 70s because of its ties to, drugs and the underworld. It's sort of what you might think of as a Greek version of the urban blues. What this style of music also had were musical elements, musical modes, styles of singing that you find in other parts of the Near East and Turkey. And so when people began to embrace this kind of music, especially leftists, so there's a political climate in which this is happening, to embrace this music, they also reinterpreted it in terms of Byzantine music, which allows them to speak of a continuum of music from Greek underworld drug songs to Byzantine liturgical chant because of the music uniting them. So it's a much more productive and creative discourse, and that's still going on. So during this period of time, from the 70s and the 80s into the 90s, you see this resurgence of interest in all things, all Eastern elements, let's say, of Greek expressive culture. You hear more Middle Eastern instruments that have been part of traditional Greek music coming into mainstream pop music. You see a resurgence of all these kinds of things, and the beginnings of dialogue with Turkish musicians, because many Greek musicians who were looking for, let's say, more pure versions of some of these Greek forms would look to Turkey for inspiration and for musical guidance and for learning some of the traditional instruments. So that tells me that there's a lot more of a dynamic going on. And I want to point out this icon. This is from a monastery on Mount Athos. This was done in 1793. And I put it up here to show how long the legacy of reinterpreting the present in terms of the past, interpenetrating present and past is going on. So this icon is from 1793, and it depicts Greeks dancing the kalamatiano, which is a very common dance danced at weddings. There's a drum there. Who's sitting up on the wall? It's David the psalmist. So he's presiding over and accompanying this Greek dance. So a very, very clear interpenetration of past and present. We are the inheritors of Byzantium. We are the inheritors of ancient Greece. David the psalmist can accompany our Kalamatiano dances. It's all part of the same cultural continuity. So that's a very dynamic flow from past to present. And finally, I see Byzantine, this Byzantine discourse, as a marker, not only a temporal marker, but also a spatial nexus. It's a point of connection between the Christian Greek world and the neighboring societies, Ottoman Turkey, because of the very fruitful and dynamic interchange of musicians in the pre-national days in the empire, during the Ottoman Empire. So I see this as a more productive, perhaps, doctrine of survivals, if you will, although I don't like the terminology, than going directly back to ancient Greece. I think it carries the legacy through, but allows all of the intervening time to come along with it. And it gives us a picture, in fact, of how all expressive culture works, how all of us do culture every day, right? We reinterpret, we pull from all over and repackage it. And then sometimes, depending on the politics of the time, depending on what's at stake, we reinterpret that in various lights for usually explicit and often implicit political reasons. And so I find that to be a very useful way to think of it, and certainly that was what I found in the field, that Skierians interpreted their own music in light of these kinds of complex, entangled connections. So that's all I have to say. If we have time after we've done our live performance, maybe I can play you the two Byzantine samples if we can get sound, but right now I'd rather give you the live sound. So I'm going to invite my colleagues Tufan and Alper to come up, and we're going to do a few songs for you. That have everything to do with regional and temporal continuity. So the first one that we're going to perform is called Togrigri, the fishing boat. Is it okay if I use this as a lyric stand? Huh? You want me to sit in the middle? Okay. Well, that's going to make it awkward with this. This is a song called in Greek a Smyrneiko, which means it's from the town that Greeks called Smyrni, that Turks called Izmir. And you'll hear, you'll hear Greek. I'm going to sing in Greek. There are a few Turkish words in there, also a little Arabic phrase. So continuity again. Is it okay if I put this here? Mm-hmm.
Is it open?
Is the mic on?
Sen
You
biraz
sound good.
ışık çalarsın.
A little bit higher. Is it possible? Is it possible? A little
To turn it up higher,
higher?
the volume,
This mic, this.
the microphone.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. It's for the tape. It's for the recording. We won't benefit from it in here.
Okay.
But
Sen biraz daha verir misin? Şey...
we have 3 more, if we still have time. Oh, we got plenty of time. Good. So the next one is much in the same vein and from the same general area. This one is called Melaleuca Medina, which means my apple, my tangerine. It's not a song about fruit, it's a love song. So those are meant to be terms of endearment. And what's great about so much of this music is that sometimes the sweetest and happiest texts sound the most mournful, and I really enjoy that. That's a very common emotional aesthetic, you might say, to the whole region. Would you agree? We're happiest when we're sad, I think is the best way to put it. Oh, I have to switch drums. This is a def. This is a frame drum you find all over the Middle East in various sizes and configurations. And the other one goes by several names. Greeks call it tubeleki. Turks call it
Darbuka.
darbuka. Okay. Yeah, Arabs call it darbuka, dumbek. It's a goblet drum. It's just good old clarinet, a G clarinet.
A little bit different clarinet. G clarinet is, you see, is longer and different French system.
But it has that lower, yeah, a little bit lower sound. And then this is a bağlama.
The traditional Turkish instrument. Say başlayalım. Chords and
Yes. Now this next one, I had better wet my whistle. This next one is an example of the way that Styrians perform some of their a cappella repertoire. This is a song that's performed at wedding processions. So there's one version that might be performed at a table, another that's performed in a procession where the bride and groom are walking through the streets of the town, and then there would be instruments playing, but I'm going to do the a cappella version, just for fun. This is called Two Suns, Two Moons. And there are a lot of different verses. I'm only going to sing 4 couplets of verses. Again, the theme is mostly love. The first verse is 2 suns, 2 moons came out today, one in your face and one in the sky. So pretty high stakes for beauty, right? Dio illi, Dio fengaria, Dio illi, Dio fengaria, Dio illi, Dio fengaria, βγήκανε σήμερα, τόνα στο πρόσωπο σου, τόνα στο πρόσωπο σου, τόνα στο πρόσωπο σου, ταλώς τα σύννεφα, ταλώς τα σύννεφα. Βιολέτα μαντισμένη, βιολέτα μαντισμένη, βιολέτα μαντισμένη, με φύλλα πράσινα, με φύλλα πράσινα. Στον έρωτα σου μπήκα, στον έρωτα σου μπήκα, στον έρωτα σου μπήκα, με 1000 βάσανα, με 1000 βάσανα. Έλα να φιληθούμε, έλα να φιληθούμε, έλα να φιληθούμε, σαν τα αγριά πουλιά, σαν τα αγριά πουλιά, που σμίγουν στα κλαδάκια, που σμίγουν στα κλαδάκια, που σμίγουν στα κλαδάκια κι αλλάζουνε φιλιά, κι αλλάζουνε φιλιά. Το λένε τα ειδονάκια, το λένε τα ειδονάκια, το λένε τα ειδονάκια, κάτω στα ρέματα, κάτω στα ρέματα. Πώς αγαπώ πουλί μου, πώς αγαπώ πουλί μου, πώς αγαπώ πουλί μου, δεν είναι ψέματα, αμάν, 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 αμάν. Thank you. And I do want to give a brief acknowledgement to the person who taught me that song in the field. Her name was Christina Ferragamo Lee. There are many different versions. One of those verses I included, she said she got from her father. The second verse, which said, my blooming violet with green leaves, I entered your love with 1,000 tortures. So that's apparently her father's verse. The final song that we want to leave you with is also from Skiros, with some very tantalizing words that are clearly derived from Turkish, interspersed in this song. This is called Yer Yerali. But I do need a little water before I sing this one. And it's an example of one of these unmetered table songs, but this time with beautiful accompaniment. Λες με φέρνει ο λογισμός, και της καρδιάς μου η λάβρα, αμάν το πουλάκι μου, και της καρδιάς μου η λάβρα, αμάν το μικράκι μου. Να πάω καστό βοյατζή, να βουτυχτώ στα μαύρα, αμάν το πουλάκι μου, να βουτυχτώ στα μαύρα, αμάν το μικράκι μου. Ήθελα να είχα δύο καρδιές, γεραλή, η μια κοντά στην άλλη, αμάν γεραλή μαμάν, η μια κοντά στην άλλη, αμάν σεβδαλή μαμάν. Όταν μ' αρένεται η μια γεραλή, να λουλουδίζει η άλλη, αμάν γεραλή μαμάν, να λουλουδίζει η άλλη, αμάν σεβδαλή μαμάν. Thank you very much. We still have about 5 minutes if you have any burning questions.
Any questions? I have a question. If you don't, do you have a question? And start. When you see something like Zorba the Greek,
Yes.
This style of music is different than this. Is this more Turkish? Is this more Greek? Or
Well,
what?
it's part of the whole nationalist project of trying to de-Turkify Greek culture, which is where the Doctrine of Survivals comes in. They've come out of the Ottoman Empire. By God, we better make sure we sort out the Turk from the Greek. That was a huge part of linguistic policy. I mean, there was a form of Greek called Katharevusan, which was created and promulgated in the education system in the 1800s, where they took out all the Slavic and Turkish loanwords and tried to recreate 5th century Attic grammar. you can still find official government documents, old ones in that style. A lot of people that are still alive went to school and learned that style of Greek, but they've modified some. So the musical vocabulary went through a similar cleansing. Katharevousa means cleansing. So in the 1950s, musician Vasilis Titsanis retuned the bouzouki. Instead of three courses of strings that could play microtones and play music from the Middle Eastern makam system of modes, he tetrachordized it and made it very Western sounding. So the style of music you hear in things like Zorba the Greek reflects some of that project.
Okay. Any similarity to the masses, the Christian mass, the melodies that we heard today, some like chanting?
Yes, unfortunately, because we couldn't play the clips, that last song, I mean, there are some intervals and some cadences, some melodic cadences that when I was learning these music, I thought, well, that just comes from, I know exactly what hymn that comes from. I mean, it's very much part of the vocabulary. But when you hear Middle Eastern music, you also hear those cadences.
Yes.
I've heard Quranic recitation and said, gee, that sounds like Greek chanting. I mean, there's a certain commonality, a certain continuity, and then these nationalist projects come in and start dividing things up and trying to clean up the mess that everybody was enjoying. That's my take on it.
Yes, very good. Any other question? Yes.
Dr. Glaros, you obviously have a great deal of musical background to understand all these things, so I'm just wondering how common is that in anthropologists, and it seems like you have special attraction to that.
Well, I'm sort of an anthropologist / ethnomusicologist, but I did my program through anthropology because I wanted to focus on music as culture. The training, the way it currently works in the academy is ethnomusicologists are in, schools of fine arts. They go through music school. To get your degree, you have to do a number of basic music theory things. And since I don't know anything about Shostakovich, I chose to stay with the anthropology part of it, which is where my heart is. So I know some things in the practical way about music, but I'm a terrible sight reader. My theory is weak. Anybody would tell you that. But in terms of understanding and caring about how people make sense of themselves through this music, because that's what we're talking about, that's where my passion lies.
The language you sang in was Greek?
Mostly Greek with a few, Aman is a word that comes to, it's an Arabic word, but it comes to Greeks through the Turkish. Is that correct? Yeah. And Yaleli is also from Arabic, and that's a common device that's used in a lot of Greek songs. Let's see where the other Turkish words. Well, this last one, yeralim, yerali, the Syrians say they don't know what this word means. I think it's a Turkish word.
I'm wounded,
Yeah, I'm wounded, right. And the whole song is about being sad and, enjoying being sad, basically. And sevdalim is clearly, it means my love. So there's clear Turkish words in there.
Enjoying being sad.
Enjoying being sad, yes. Well, what are the blues about in American culture, right?
Well, I want to thank you all for being here, and I would like to give you some certificates that Dr. Glaros received here last week. Alper, Aslihak. Thank you very much.
Yay. An outstanding job.
Thank you.
And Tufan, Sevim.
Please give my colleagues a big hand. They were very nice to come down here and grace you with their musical.
You regularly perform at weddings and restaurants and
No.
occasions.
Also on spatial lines, but they're not commercial.
Okay. For fun and for parties and things. So that's great.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
Enjoy your
coming,
day.
everyone.